So yeah, these days people don't trust me with running internet exchanges, but I do get to run fun meetings like this. One of the things that we do at UKNOF, I was talking about sustainability and good governance there, is that we like to be transparent about how we're running the organization and make sure that you all understand how UKNOF works, particularly, if this is your first or second meeting, maybe you're kind of wondering, well, what's all this stuff behind the curtain? So every year in the September meeting, we give a status update. We've also started doing the UKNOF AGM as an event for the board and the advisory committee members, which is back-to-back with the September jamboree of meetings. So I will give another version, slightly different version of this to the AGM and the advisory committee tomorrow. But I wanted to share with you where we're at, what we've been doing. So we've run 32 meetings now. They all seem to have gone pretty well. The smallest was 40. The biggest was 280. We're registered just over 250 for this. We always have a good turnout when we come to Yorkshire, and this is certainly one of our biggest meetings. Mailing list is pretty stable now, about 1,200 people. We have an active and engaged program committee, advisory committee, board, meeting committee. We don't have a committee yet, but we also have a team of regular volunteers and irregular volunteers, and we're in stable financial shape. I mentioned the remit in my introductory presentation a little bit earlier, but it's about distribution of clue, and it's also about focus on the engineering and the operations. And we are free to have a fairly open remit. There's lots of things that we can do here that are not restricted in the way that organizations that run pieces of internet infrastructure are focused on. So what do? It's almost entirely the meetings. We do these 3 times a year. It's about having cool, interesting talks, practice from people who have been doing it, actually building stuff, not being too focused. It's quite fun that we can have some off-the-wall talks from time. And it's also about openness. You don't have to be a member. You don't have to even pay to register. We want to be as open as possible, and that's a long-standing internet tradition of bodies like the ITF and RIPE and NANOG. And the other thing is that there's a subset of UKNOF people who also attend these international operations meetings, and we do our best to bring the international speakers every time to share that with the UK community that doesn't necessarily get to go to these meetings. We're present in all the social media stuff. It's mostly about announcements. The charter says that we should have at least 1 meeting per year in London and at least a year outside London. That's slightly formalised over the past couple of years since we scaled the meetings up. Pretty much every January we're now going to be in London. Every April we're going to be in Manchester. What we do with September meetings is we go to slightly cheaper cities. We can therefore do the meeting over 1 day, which gives us flexibility to combine it with other events. It seems to be working quite well. We need to figure out where we're going next September. The algorithm says that we're on the 3rd Thursday of January, April, and September because that mostly avoids clashing with other internet meetings. But there are obviously some constraints in terms of venue availability. So we're the 3rd Tuesday in January, for example. But we'd love to hear your suggestions about good venues for this, and we're always looking for sponsors to support the meetings. Here's the meeting attendance over the last dozen meetings. And it's not an up and to the right graph. It's a little bit variable. You can see the last September meeting, 29, was in Belfast, so that was quite a small turnout. But we're consistently over 200 now. I think if you look at the demographic penetration of international meetings, then I think that's a pretty good showing for this country. We don't do this without infrastructure. The infrastructure is donated and managed by volunteers. The Indico server is the biggest piece of that, so ByteMark provide the VMs for that and the wiki. We just migrated all the DNS to various VMs. That's a project that Nat's been doing. There's still a few things that are running on my personal server, which is supported by Jump. Again, we want to get that off the physical server onto VMs. LUNAP hosts the mailing list, which these days is a non-trivial exercise for a mailing list like that and keeping it spam-free. Archives of all our videos are put on the YouTube channel. So Brandon doesn't just do all the hard work of actually webcasting, but he also does the hard work of editing all the videos and putting them up there as a resource. So very grateful to Brandon at Bogons for webcasting, to Portcat Fast for connectivity, for Bytemark for the hosting. And then there are various other parties that help out in various ways, giving us video conference facilities for various meetings and phone service. UKNOF's funding model, we work on a non-profit basis. The idea is that we do not charge meeting registration fees. We know that it costs you or your employer your time and travel to be here. We don't also want to burden you with the cost of paying for lunch in the meeting space. And it works very well because we have a whole lot of sponsors, some who come back repeatedly, who sponsor the meeting and pick up most of the costs. So we're very grateful to all of them. We do charge some registrations, but mostly that is to discourage late registration because there is there are real costs and real overheads of us having to process a whole lot of people at the last minute. Register early if you can, let us know if you can't make it, is what we ask for. Some people support us by giving us some cash. Particularly grateful to BT for 12,000 as a patron sponsor over the past year or two. We have a good operating cash buffer. The usual non-profit principle is that you have enough money in the bank for continued operations. We have at least enough money for one more meeting without any further input. There's more about we'll publish more about the accounts at the AGM. But it needs to be sustainable. When we go to bigger venues like this, the venues are more expensive, the catering is more expensive, it needs to be paid for. So we need to spend time raising the sponsorship funds, and that pays for we use some of that money to pay for the people, in particular Denesh, who do the work to raise the sponsorship funds. What does it cost to run? Typically we're about 25 to 35k per meeting. It's roughly about £100 a head, possibly slightly more for more expensive cities for the venue. And then there's all the bits and pieces. There's admin, badges, shipping, connectivity, travel, various other expenses. We also reimburse a subset of the directors who devote significant amounts of time. We've set an hourly rate for that. And a new thing that we've done this year as a result of advisory committee input is that all of the directors that do work for the company submit a quote at the start of the year, say, I'm going to spend X number of hours on UKNOF, and this is what it's going to cost you, and this is what I estimate my expenses to be. We think that's good practice. We always have detailed accounts available at the AGM, or if you're particularly interested and concerned or have questions, we're happy to share them with you. So, one of the pieces of feedback that we've had from the sponsors is that the sponsor scheme that we've been running, while effective and flexible, is actually bloody complicated. So we have, Denesh has done some work to simplify that. There's now only 4 sponsor levels. Contributory, where you're adding to some feature of the meeting. Associate, where you're paying for a significant chunk of the cost of the meeting. Premium, where you're paying for a bigger chunk of the meeting and you also have the option of giving a sponsor presentation. And then there are various ways to contribute to social, which we decided we're going to call pints and promos. So there's more entry-level options, and then there's various optional extras. If you want to pay for banners or flyers or some widget in the bag, you can do that as well. We've also been trying to improve the editorial separation between the parts of UKNOF that are actually technical content and the parts of UKNOF that are sponsor content. So I think about a year and a half ago, we established a principle within the program committee that no more than 45 minutes per day per meeting is assigned to sponsor presentations, and that there are a maximum of 3 sponsor presentations per meeting, and that these sponsor speaking places are on a first-come, first-served basis. They're an optional extra. Another thing that we have is patron sponsor level, which I already mentioned. And we also have partners, which are basically organizations that provide significant resources towards running the meeting. If you're interested in sponsoring, we'd love to talk to you. Please speak to Denesh. He'll be happy to walk you through the new sponsor scheme or take your feedback on that. I hope that we can continue with the level of sponsor support that we have and the way that we've managed to balance it up. Say a little bit about UKNOF governance. We're only running meetings here. We're not running world-class critical infrastructure. So we do not want to get buried in a whole load of politics or overthink about how to run the meeting. We want to keep it simple. We think accountability is important. We have a bunch of stakeholders of the UK's very strong non-profit internet organisations that already do all this governance stuff. So we have the advisory committee. These organisations have individuals that they appoint to the advisory committee. We are transparent to the advisory committee about how we run the organisations. How do you get on the advisory committee? It's the existing company members that invite that. In practice, we've invited more organisations than have accepted. The legal entity is UK Internet Forum. It was set up about a decade ago as an alternative internet trade association. It never quite did that, but it's basically, so essentially we reversed UKNOF into it. UKNOF is effectively the only thing that UKNOF does. So it's doing the secretariat, it's doing the bookkeeping, the invoicing, the bank accounts, and it's essentially a one-on-one relationship between UKIF and UKNOF. The board members, everyone except Steve is here, so you probably recognize them already. We're very happy to speak to you about any aspect of running UKNOF. What does the board do? Mainly it's about appointing and removing the committee members, signing off on the finances. The board is natural persons, and it's all the usual UK public company limited by guarantee fiduciary duties. And there's a rotation of a third of the board at each AGM. A little bit more about the advisory committee. We don't expect money from the advisory committee. We want the advisory committee to provide time and oversight. We thought about, if you're familiar with NANOG, then you'll know that it has individual membership. It's something we considered, but we've never really felt that there was a compelling case to justify the overheads of doing that. So our accountability to the stakeholders is through the advisory committee. You probably are a member of more than one of the advisory committee organisations, so that is your channel if you have issues or questions, or of course any UKNOF officers are happy to speak to you as well. Who's on the advisory committee? Basically, the individuals are probably very familiar, but the organisations at the moment are BBC, IX Leeds, the Internet Systems Consortium, Links, LUNAP, Janet, and the RIPE NCC. And we're very grateful to all the ways in which these organisations support us, in addition to the time of their key people who are on the advisory committee. And you can think of other organisations that might be appropriate, SPI, SOC, Nominate, 2 or 3 others, but it's also about who's interested and engaged. And really, the advisory committee don't do much. They look at the accounts, they attend the AGM, they keep us straight. Programme committee, that's a more significant time demand. There are 15 volunteers in that. And really their job is to make sure that we have interesting presentations. And partly that's about reviewing all the submissions that we get, but it's also about coming up with ideas, chasing down people. We're always looking for good stuff. We're generally blessed with a lot of good stuff. And we also have a process in place now where abstracts get issued, where the call for abstracts get issued at the end of the previous meeting. So you want to give a talk, now is the best time to submit because you'll be in first. Submissions for UKNOF32 are already open. Or you can suggest ideas or ask the PC, well, could I give a talk about this? Again, most of the programme committee members are in the room, so do feel free to approach them. Remember that UKNOF team members, whether they're from one of the various committees of the board, are wearing red lanyards. I want to say a little bit more about programme content because we've evolved our thinking about this a little bit. We've had some feedback from people who are a bit confused about, well, was that a sponsored presentation or wasn't it? We now, thanks to the Indigo tool that we use, it's a little bit unfriendly in some ways, but one of the things it's really good at is the process for rating submissions. All the submissions come in, the programme committee members score them, it generates an average score. The other thing that we can do with the score is we can compare the score the programme committee gave it to the score that it got on the meeting survey. That's why it's important for you to give us feedback on the meeting survey, because then we can figure out whether the programme committee is doing the right thing or whether there are gaps or inconsistencies. So that's a submitted talks process. There are also sponsor talks. As I said, they're limited. But you get a sponsor slot by paying for it. You get a submitted talk slot by submitting material of a sufficient quality. Because of the confusion, we've decided that if you're a sponsor of a meeting, then the only way you get a talk is to pay for it. You do not get to, if you're a sponsor and you submit a talk, it's too confusing. There's a potential conflict of interest there, so we're splitting the two. The other thing I just want to say a little bit about is that we've had, over the past year or so, various attempts by people who say, I don't want that speaker to go on. I'm not happy with what they're going to say. And I want to make it clear we're not going to suppress people's legitimate expression if it's something that meets UKNOF's quality and mission criteria. So please understand that we're not going to censor what we do just because somebody leans on us a little bit. I think the editorial independence is very important, but we're also about diversity of opinions and viewpoints. So if there's a talk that's going on at UKNOF and you're not happy about it, you've got a different view, then please do submit, and we'll certainly give you a very strong consideration of a right of reply, which has been done in all of these cases. We also have a meeting committee. This is basically a separate team from the program committee. We run the meetings separately, and the meeting calls, coordination calls separately now. And that's all about meeting logistics, all the hard work of making sure that the banners are in place and that the connectivity is working and the AV system. So the meeting committee is basically people who help at nearly every meeting. We also have a volunteer cloud, which are people who are potentially helping on a more ad hoc basis. So this is who the meeting committee members are. And as I said, we have the volunteer cloud. If you're interested in volunteering to help out just maybe one UKNOF meeting, we have a mailing list for everyone. Feel free to sign up. It's an easy, painless way to get involved. We won't slave drive you too hard. There are too many of these volunteers to name them all. We're very grateful to everyone that supports it because we wouldn't have the community that we did without that. I'd also like to thank the PC members who have stepped down over the past year. Ian Mako is no longer on the PC, and although Nigel is involved in various other things at UKNOF, he's also not on the PC, so I'm very grateful to them. And also to all of our speakers. They come here on their own time and expense. I think it would be appropriate just to show our gratitude to everyone for that. So, I also mentioned earlier the Respect at UKNOF policy. This is kind of following industry best practice for other conferences. We want everyone to have a good time. We don't feel people to feel that they can't stand up and say what they want without being flamed or that somebody's creeping on them or anything like that. There's some very simple principles there. It's kind of common sense. But please read the respect policy, make sure you understand it, and if you have any concerns about the behavior of another attendee or participant, then please let us know. So, I'm nearly finished here. Next meetings, UKNOF33 will be back in the lovely London Bishopsgate venue. Note that it's the 19th of January. There was a previous date published the 21st. It's now the Tuesday, the 19th of January. UKNOF34 will be back in Manchester Central on 21st of April. 35 will be back in September. We're looking for a venue for that. We're looking for speakers. We're looking for sponsors. That's hopefully all the nuts and bolts. What do we think we've actually achieved over the past year? The multi-day meetings seem to work. Again, we'd like feedback on that. We found 2 venues that work really well for the size of what we're doing, and we have a good working relationship with them. We have the respect policy. Another thing that we did was the right meeting happened in London, and we basically got together people who are running similar national NOGs in other countries across Europe and beyond, actually, and we just kind of shared best practice and figured out, well, what's the best way to run these meetings. Another new thing that we've done is that a lot of the sysadmin has been handled by myself and Nat and 2 or 3 other people that have helped out from time to time. And we're starting to backlog. It's the usual IT department problem. So we've now set up an ops team, which at the moment consists of me and Nat and Matthew, but we could really actually do with some of you sysadmin people, if you could help us out with some of the things that we need to do, just upgrading Indico to the latest software, migrating the name servers and email servers. So if you're interested in helping out, please speak to me or Nat or Matthew, because there's work to be done there. So this is how you contact UKNOF and the various committees and the board. And really that's pretty much what I have to say. I'd be very happy to take questions now or through your advisory committee representatives for the AGM, or indeed, the nice thing about a two-day meeting is we get to do the social in the bar this evening. Happy to take any questions or comments or feedback. Okay, well, I hope that means happy customers, but you can also fill in the survey. So a reminder, registration and call for presentations for UKNOF33 are now open. Yep, we've actually finished early, so thank you all the speakers for keeping on time. I'm certainly very thirsty now. The last thing I'd like to do is just to thank our sponsors, Actions and Alternative.
Somebody who wanted to whip up and do a quick presentation, 5 minutes or something.
Oh, yes, right. Yes, before I wrap up, we can actually use this time. Is Nigel here? No, he's not. Okay, we'll do that tomorrow then instead. Okay, we have Nigel. There's been some discussions between UKNOF and the NICC, which is a UK telecom standard body, about ways in which we could work together. So we think we've come to a principle there. Nigel, we're just going to explain a little bit about how that works and also call for involvement there. So thanks, Kathy, for the reminder.
Is Nigel ask for? Because you had somebody else who wanted to.
Yes. Yeah, gotcha.
We had somebody else.
Yeah. So again, sorry about that. Big thank you to our sponsors, Actions and Alternative as gold, IPv4 Marketplace again, and Thousand Eyes again as silver sponsors. RIPE NCC is an ongoing support sponsor. And the social tonight, social tonight is sponsored jointly by Ask4 Actions and Flex Optics, and just going to say a little bit more about that.
Hi everybody. I'm John Thorner from Ask4. Some of you know me, some of you don't. We've put the social on this evening for you with Actions and Flex Optics and Co. I've tried to keep it very Sheffield-based, being a Sheffield boy myself. So Kelham Island Industrial Museum is about a 10-minute walk away from here. There's some Ask4 people in the room, hopefully, if they put their hand up or stand up. Stand up, Ask4 people. Embarrass them, might as well. There you go. If you latch on to one of those guys, there's 4 or 5 of them in the room, and we'll be able to go down and walk to where we need to get to sensibly. We basically got free access to the museum for as long as we want. Between 6 and 7, you can look and do what you want. It's all about Sheffield heritage, steelmaking, and lots of interesting bits and pieces. You'll be granted by some beer when you get there from one of our local breweries, and some Yorkshire crisps and bits and pieces like that. If you want to go back to your hotel, though, and come back to Kelham Island, that's fine, but you need to be there for no later than about 10 to 7, because at 7 o'clock we've got the Riverdon steam engine that's going to run for us, which is this big 18,000 horsepower, quite impressive bit of kit. And then after that, we're going straight upstairs for a pie and pea supper, music, beer, and the usual bits and pieces that happen on this kind of event. Okay? So that's all I wanted to say, and I'll be at the bar later and see you in a bit. All right? Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, John, and that's it for today. See you all first thing tomorrow morning.